worldwide attention fixed on Oklahoma State Penitentiary. We are one of a handful of states pushing ahead with state-funded execution for convicted murderers. Capital punishment has come under fire recently as lethal injection drugs became unavailable, opening the door for last-minute legal maneuvering and reigniting the discussion on cruel and unusual punishment. There are 49 inmates on Oklahoma's death row. 44 of them are housed here at Oklahoma State Penitentiary. The execution chamber is also inside these walls. Interviews with death row inmates are rare, as much of the execution process and their lives on the inside are still secret. In Oklahoma, death row is halfway underground. A metaphor, really, for the inmates who come here to live and to die. According to the Department of Corrections, the average execution age is 38 years old. Most prisoners will be housed here 12 years before their time is up. Richard Glossop has lived on H Unit 17 years. His execution date was delayed twice and is expected sometime this year. We speak through bars and glass. His words pass through a metal grate.
It's just like you're in a tomb and you're just waiting to die so they can finish it off.
Glossop's tomb was sealed shut by 2 juries following the brutal murder of Barry Van Treese. It was 1997. Van Treese was the owner of the Best Budget Inn in Oklahoma City. The motel handyman bludgeoned him to death while he slept in room 102. The state first arrested the young handyman, Justin Sneed, and then went after Glossop, alleging a case of murder for hire.
My daughter begged him not to go that day. So she was 7.
The murderers left Barry Van Treese's 7 children fatherless. His wife, Donna Van Treese, a widow, the single mom of 5 young kids.
Toughest job I ever had was to, how do you tell your kids that they're never going to see their dad again?
18 years since the day she lost her husband, and Donna Van Treese is ready for his killer to die. She is unconcerned about a dignified or merciful death.
Would I wish a cruel death on anyone? No. I'm hoping that it's quick and that as long as it's quick.
Justin, you're how old? 19.
This is a never-before-seen videotaped interrogation of the confessed killer, Justin Sneed.
I don't think it's just you. I think there are more people involved, and you can straighten out a lot of things, and I just don't think you should take the whole thing.
Sneed was the state's star witness and really the only proof Glossop was involved at all. Both sides agreed, no question. Richard Glossop wasn't even in the room when Barry Van Treese was murdered. Prosecutors said in court, hiring out the murder was worse, paying for a man's death without even having to bother to carry it out.
Is it all your idea, the whole thing? No, sir. Well, okay, tell me. You need to tell us about it.
Justin Sneed was spared his life. He got a life sentence in exchange for his testimony against Richard Glossop.
We say now that we're going to reserve the death penalty for the worst killers or the worst killings, and it's clear in this instance that Mr. Glossop did not have the capability of taking another life. And it seems bizarre that the person who did got a life sentence. The Constitution forbids cruel and unusual punishment, and the Supreme Court has expressed that we will not execute people cruelly, will not torture them to death. It goes against American values. And Oklahoma certainly has not persuaded me that we've prevented that.
The Oklahoma Death Chamber has a fresh coat of paint now, an updated protocol, and a to-do list 49 inmates long. A few doors down, Glossop, steadfastly declaring his innocence, says they pinned this crime on the wrong man.
Has there ever been a time that you have admitted your guilt in this case?
I don't have no guilt in this case. After the fact, I made some really stupid decisions. I'm not saying I didn't. But if stupid's a crime, I'm guilty of being stupid. But I've sure paid my price for that.
Some wonder if his moral compass is significantly crooked enough to die for this crime.
The dying part don't bother me. Everybody dies. But I want people to know that I didn't kill this man. I didn't participate. I didn't plan or anything to do with this crime.
Without a doubt in my mind, they have who who was responsible for masterminding it, who was responsible for covering it up afterwards, who was responsible for the actual crime.
The U.S. Supreme Court will soon weigh in on Oklahoma's death cocktail. Does it serve up sufficient portions of mercy and justice? Legal delays brought Richard Glossop one more Christmas than he expected, 18 more Christmases than Barry Ventries. Allie Meyer, News Channel 4.
News Channel 4's Allie Meyer continues our team coverage and joins us now live from McAllister with more on today's developments.
Marianne Lance, mixed reaction is right. The family of Barry Ventries came here to McAllister. They have an extended large family out of the Lawton area. They weren't all here, but several members were. They left after that stay of execution was announced and did not address the media. Richard Glossop's supporters were here as well. 6 of them were already preparing to go inside the execution chamber when that stay was announced. His good friend, a famous nun, Sister Helen Prejean, said she had a feeling today Richard Glossop would get a stay. When the stay of execution came down, Glossop's friends and family were in a holding area inside prison walls.
We were all dumbfounded. I mean, we had to repeat it. We had to repeat the news because we couldn't take it in.
That's Ian Woods, a 31-year veteran reporter from the UK. He started writing about Glossop's case last year. That coverage kick-started a friendship. And today he came to Oklahoma to witness the execution, not as a journalist, but as a friend.
I'm not going to sit on the fence. I thought this execution was wrong. I didn't think there was enough evidence to justify a death penalty. 31 years and I've never experienced anything like this.
Kathleen Lord was there too, the mastermind behind that legal brief.
No, he has an amazing attitude. He hadn't given up hope, but he was also, realistic, and he was going into it with the most. I can't even put words into it.
It's hard for me to describe it.
Experts agree the filing was a long shot, but Glossop supporters, including his friend, a famous Catholic nun, Helen Prejean, kept the faith.
Shame on me for not believing in none.
News Channel 4's Allie Meyer is live in McAllister. Allie, you've been the premier reporter on this. You had an interview with him, an exclusive interview with Glossop. We followed this last week when we were right up to the wire, or a couple of weeks ago, and he got that stay. Tell us where it stands today.
Well, Kent, certainly a very different scenario today than it was almost at this very moment exactly 2 weeks ago when Richard Glossop got yet another stay of execution, kind of a last-minute stay. If you'll remember from 2 weeks ago, it was just 3 hours ahead of his scheduled execution. The feel here at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary is a lot different today, certainly quite a bit calmer. Here we are still 3 hours ahead of the anticipated time of execution for inmate Richard Glossop. They closed the gate to the prison about 30 minutes ago. It was an hour and a half ago when media from around the world began arriving here on the grounds of the Oklahoma State Penitentiary.
Let's go down to Allie for the latest on what the situation there is now at the state pen. Allie.
Kevin, we are expecting to hear from DOC Director Robert Patton. What we see now is the director pulling up to the media headquarters right now. This building that is off to my left is housing all state and national media that have been watching the Glossop execution throughout the day today. And so now you see Director Patton walking toward the media facility. We have an additional camera and crew inside the media headquarters. And so as soon as he walks up to the mic, we'll be taking his statement live so our viewers at home can hear what Director Patton has to say about this latest development in the Richard Glossop execution. So as Director Patton makes his way into the media facility and up to the podium, let's take that camera angle now and hear more from him on this latest development here today from the state penitentiary.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Patton. I'm the director of the Oklahoma Department of Corrections.
All right, Allie, we just listened to the very brief remarks from the Director of Corrections there. And the question I have for you, and if there you see him walking out of the facility, and if you can hear me, Allie, the question I have is what a time to decide the drugs may not work just a few hours, or really just maybe not even hours before he was scheduled to be executed. Have you heard anything more on that?
Yes, Kevin, a very good question. And in fact, I will tell you, it's quite confusing for us here in the media, because the question raised here by Governor Fallon in her media statement is, to quote the press release here, it says it'll give the Department of Corrections and its attorneys the opportunity to determine whether potassium acetate is compliant with the state's court-approved execution procedures. So let me explain what's confusing about that. It lists specifically potassium acetate on this press release from the governor's office. However, from the Department of Corrections, let's take a closer look at this paper right here. This is what they give to the media witnesses. It walks us through the method of execution, lethal injection. So we're looking right here at the top of the paper. I don't see potassium acetate listed as one of the drugs.
New at 5, more on the chemical used in the execution that is now under scrutiny. Allie Meyer, along with Abby Broyles, are standing by outside the McAllister State Prison with details. And Allie, we're not talking about the controversial drug midazolam right now, rather something entirely different here.
Kevin, that is quite right. We're not talking about midazolam here, that suspect drug that has gone all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. We're talking about an entirely different drug, and we are just now learning within the past few minutes that this may be a case of a completely absent-minded mix-up. I'm joined now by Sister Helen Prejean. She is learning a little bit more. Sister Helen, you were inside with Richard Glossop. And
no, I wasn't with Richard. We were the witnesses for Richard were all being held in a room waiting. And so we were waiting on word when we would be brought into the execution chamber, which is supposed to happen at 3.
We are learning from Governor Mary Fallon that the problem in this execution was a drug called potassium acetate. So that was confusing to us in the media because we don't see potassium acetate listed at all as one of the execution drugs. What do you know about the involvement of potassium acetate in the execution of Richard Glossop?
It's a food preservative. It also happens to be a Richard Glossop preservative because he's not dead, because they messed it up. They got the wrong drugs. And one of the real bad problems is the Supreme Court has been allowing states to experiment. They're not monitoring this at all. They're leaving it up to the states, and Oklahoma messed it up.
So what you're telling me is you believe the state mixed up potassium acetate and potassium chloride, the drug that stops the heart.
Potassium chloride is the real killer. It's the real killer. And that's when Charles Warner was executed, and he said, I have acid in my veins because it's just like fire going through your veins and it stops your heart.
I'm prepared for whatever happens, but it's not easy. It's like you're in a tomb and you're just waiting to die so they can finish it off. I mean, that's the best way to describe it, because you hardly got any contact. The contact that you do have is with guards. And it's hard, harder than people think it is. People think we got it easy down here. That's not true, not even close to true. The dying part don't bother me, everybody dies. But I want people to know that I didn't kill this man. I didn't participate, I didn't plan or anything to do with this crime. I want people to know that it's not just for me that I'm speaking out. It's for other people on death row around this country that are innocent and are going to be executed for something they didn't do. It's not right that it's happening. We're in a country where that should never happen. They offered me a life sentence at my second trial, and I turned it down because I'm not going to stand there and admit to doing something that I didn't do. And, even though my attorney said I was an idiot for doing something like that because, I could end up back on death row, I said I'd prefer to end up back on death row than to tell somebody I committed a crime that I didn't commit, especially one as bad as this one. I understand that the death penalty, people want the death penalty, especially in the state of Oklahoma because of the crimes that are committed. And I understand that. Even though I don't believe in it, I understand that. But one of the things you should be absolutely certain about is that you're not about to kill an innocent man.
Justin, you're how old? Is it all your idea, the whole thing?
No, sir.
Well, okay, tell me. You need to tell us about it.
I wake up and look at them walls and I'm sitting there going, how in the hell am I here? And, you know, I think about it and think about it, and try to figure out what went wrong. You know, I just can't figure it out. And it's a scary thing. It just really doesn't make any sense to me what's going on. It doesn't. They're just in such a hurry to kill. You're crammed in this box, and every day you have to think about dying. And it gets even more scarier when they're upstairs drilling and stuff like that, and you know they're putting these cells together to stick you in. I think that day was, when they started that construction, was probably the scariest day I had in here, in my opinion. I think that was, because then you know they're going through all this stuff to make sure they kill somebody. I mean, that's a scary thing to think about.